aircraft is the best aircraft that we can provide our men and women in uniform, and this government is committed to giving them the very best.
It's a lethal node on the internet of the battle space.
The F-35 is nothing but a bomb truck.
I don't understand why Canada wants to have a stealthy bomber.
Governments have already put over $150 million into it. Why would you now consider buying anything else?
We would cancel that sole source process.
This is procurement, twisted and manipulated, and I don't know where it comes from.
Hello, I'm Scott Taylor. I'm a former Canadian soldier, a journalist, and since 1988, the publisher of Esprit de Corps magazine. There's little doubt Canada needs a new fleet of fighter jets. But which one, and at what cost? Those questions have touched off a major political dogfight in this country between those who say we are investing too much in one aircraft and those who say the F-35 is the right fighter at the right price with the right spin-off benefits for Canada's aerospace industry and its workers. Over the next hour, we'll hear from all sides. We'll get exclusive access to the most advanced aerial fighting machines on the planet. And we'll ask some serious questions about a very secretive purchasing process. This is F-35, the politics of procurement. The F-35 Lightning II is marketed as the world's only fifth-generation multi-role fighter. Without revealing the criteria for its choice, the Harper government has decided the F-35 is the only aircraft that can meet Canada's needs to replace our aging fleet of CF-18 Hornets. But does the F-35 and its industrial benefits program represent the best overall package for Canada at the best price for Canadian taxpayers? These are some of the questions we seek to answer. July 16th, 2010. On this otherwise quiet midsummer's day, Canada's Minister of Defence enters a packed hall to make an announcement. He is about to commit Canada to the single largest military equipment purchase in Canadian history and fulfill a long-standing commitment to renew Canada's Air Force with a new advanced fighter aircraft.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Minister of National Defence, I'm extremely proud to announce that the Government of Canada is delivering on that promise, committing today to acquire 65 Joint Strike Fighter F-35 Lightning II aircraft to meet the security challenges of the 21st century. We are exercising our option under the Memorandum of Understanding entered into in early 2000 with the Joint Strike Fighter partner nations, the United States, Britain, Italy, the Netherlands, Australia, Denmark, Norway, and Turkey. We expect to begin taking delivery of the aircraft, the first F-35 Lightning II, in 2016. Together with infrastructure, training, simulators, weapons, and other items, our investment is valued at approximately $9 billion. This is one of the largest defense procurement projects in the history of Canada.
The plane's manufacturer provided a $1 million backdrop for the occasion, a full-scale model of the F-35. The Defence Minister's decision to jump into the deal, especially while Parliament was in summer recess, was met with sharp criticism from the opposition.
If he thought that it was politically so positive, why did he wait to announce it until Parliament had adjourned last June? And then sort of in a July news conference when people are at the cottage or planning their summer holidays, he suddenly announces the largest ever military procurement in Canadian history as a sole source, non-competitive process.
In March of this year, a significant upgrade.
Just 2 months before the announcement, the NDP's defence critic questioned the government about its plans to replace Canada's fleet of CF-18 fighter jets following a $2.6 billion midlife upgrade.
We continue to hear rumors of immediate plan to replace those jets. Can you tell us what the expected life of the useful life of these F-18s that we just finished refurbishing and modernizing? What would that be from here on in, Mr. Chairman?
When the legitimate question was asked in the House of Commons in May of this year during the estimates to the minister himself, tell us about the procurement of the replacement for the F-18. He was the one who put it on the record and made it clear that regardless of our participation in the Joint Strike Fighter development project, which was a development project, there would still be a competition, an open, transparent competition on the replacement of the F-18.
This next generation fighter will be, again, an open, competitive, transparent process that will see us receive the best capability to provide that capability to the best pilots in the world.
2 months later, the government announced during the summertime that they had made a decision to sole source the F-35, that they were bypassing the competition process, and that this was the best plane for Canada, and then proceeded to, after the fact, claim that there had been a competition 10 years before.
There was a competitive process. That process took place some time ago. It was a very competitive and, in fact, a rigorous process that was decided in favor of the F-35 Lightning II.
I think that that's a total sham. The competition that took place was an American competition to decide who was going to develop this particular plane. That decision was made. Canadians were essentially onlookers to that process, had no say in the decision making, and in fact, it was done 10 years before Canada had even committed itself to buying that plane.
The competition both Harris and McKay were referring to was a multi-billion-dollar contest between Boeing's X-32A and Lockheed Martin's X-35 over which company would develop the Joint Strike Fighter. In 2001, after exhaustive testing, selection teams from the United States and Britain gave the win to Lockheed Martin's X-35. It was to become the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter.
This competition, the one whereby the Americans and the Brits selected Lockheed Martin over Boeing, was a competition to decide which of these two companies would build this aircraft to meet the needs that were defined by the Americans and by the Brits. This had nothing at all to do with which aircraft would best be able to meet Canada needs 2 decades later. And to suggest that is just wrong, and I think everybody involved knows that that's not true. So to perpetuate that is I think, frankly, unconscionable.
Our predecessors chose the Lightning because they believed it was the best aircraft for Canada, a measure which we supported because it was and is the right thing to do.
In 1997, the then Liberal government of Mr. Chrétien agreed to participate in the development portion of the F-35 with a number of other countries. I think we sort of took a mid-level position in terms of the development money that we were going to put in. And that's benefited Canadian aerospace companies by almost $500 million, I think. So that was a wise decision and a good decision. But the decision to ultimately buy only that airplane was not made in 1997. It was made after Parliament shut down last summer when Peter MacKay announced that he was doing that with a sole source, no public competition process.
With partisan politics clouding the issue, we sought some clarity from the man who brought Canada into the Joint Strike Fighter program.
We committed $100 million of National Defense's money. We got $50 million from Industry Canada. And we invested it into the program, purpose being essentially that the rules of the game were that if you didn't participate in the program, your industry would not be entitled to bid on any contracts in the program. And at the time, the program was considered the largest procurement in U.S. history, $200 billion. It was going to be huge. And when we looked at it at that time, it was clear to me that we couldn't not be part of the program. Of course, at that time, there was no discussion at all about replacing our F-18s with this one. It was simply, let's get into it, our industry will benefit, and at the same time, we'll learn about what's going on, the latest in materials, the latest in avionics. We'll learn a lot, too, that can help us if and when we're ready to start a program to replace our F-18s.
Following the July 2010 announcement, the Harper government launched an unprecedented public relations offensive to sell the F-35 deal to the public. While on his annual Arctic tour, the Prime Minister raised the specter of the Russian boogeyman coming over the pole.
As you know, as you may have heard, 2 Russian aircraft were identified north of Inuvik. They came as close as 30 nautical miles from Canadian soil. 2 CF-18 Hornets shadowed them until they turned around, and thanks to the rapid response of the Canadian forces, at no time did the Russian aircraft enter Canadian sovereign airspace.
You have a plane that's 20 years older than I am, that's flying very slowly and noisily across the Canadian Arctic, allegedly, and somehow we need to have a stealth attack fighter to go and deal with this great threat. Makes no sense at all. And if the Russians, by the way, with whom we participate in joint Air Force and naval training exercises all the time, are in fact an identifiable enemy of Canada's, we better get a lot more than 65 stealth fighters if we plan to deal with the Russian Air Force.
Canadian government policy itself says there is no military challenge in the Arctic. I just sat at a presentation by the U.S. general who's in charge of NORAD and Northern Command. He said the same thing. He said, in the U.S., we do not see any military challengers in the Arctic. And he said that he agreed with Canadian policy that pointed out the same thing.
The real need for the F-35 goes far beyond that. It goes into expeditionary operations by the Canadian forces, by land forces, by naval forces, where air cover is going to be very, very important in the future. There is a whole range of possible scenarios where the F-35 will be valuable to Canada, both in operations, but as a deterrent, and that's an element that can't be totally ignored. So protection of Canadian sovereignty both in the Arctic and, in fact, over the main landmass of Canada is important, but there's a much bigger story than that.
But it was the capabilities of the F-35 and the industrial benefits that could flow from the purchase of the aircraft that became the centerpiece of the Prime Minister's campaign.
For the last 13 years, through governments both liberal and conservative, Canada has been fully involved in the development, the design, and initial production phases of this world-class aircraft. Governments, beginning with our predecessors, have already put over $150 million of taxpayers' money into it. The prototypes are in the air. So you have to ask yourselves, why would you now consider buying anything else? Today there is nothing else like the F-35 Lightning.
With such polarized opinions about the F-35's potential tactical applications, we went to the home base of the Lightning II to hear directly from the manufacturer about the capabilities of this aircraft. Home to some 14,000 workers, this sprawling facility traces its aircraft roots back to the early days of the Second World War. The pride in that aviation legacy, as defined by the company motto at the entrance, is evident throughout the plant. But the focus is on the future, symbolized by Lockheed Martin's international partnerships, the cornerstone of which are the 9 member countries of the Joint Strike Fighter program.